rangefinder, I'll clean that up. The glass surfaces are easy enough to get to. Everything looks relatively clean, to tell the truth. There's not really a problem with this. This mirror here is a front surface silvered mirror, and I won't be touching that with anything. It's got a couple of minor spots on it, but they're probably not going to clean away with any magical method at all. A little spot of glue there loose, doing nothing useful. So apart from that, everything here looks really good. So I'm not expecting to have to do an awful lot to this rangefinder. Just a little bit of cleaning on some of the readily available surfaces, and not an awful lot of it besides. If I did nothing at all, you'd hardly notice, because for whatever reason this is all very clean. In marked contrast to some of the rest of the camera. And we have one lens there, which is a bit awkward to get at, but that cleaned up okay too. At the other side of that, do I need to do anything to it? Let's have a look. Some of these surfaces are a bit more awkward to get to than others. If somebody cleaned this previously, and that's why these surfaces I can see appear clean, it may be that they didn't bother with the awkward ones. But no, it all looks pretty good. And I think that can go straight back onto the top of the body now. Everything's moving very, very well. So how does this sit? Right, I'll take that thing back off there, of course. Lower this into position. Now there were two washers underneath this, spacer washers. So I've got to make sure that they go back. I'm checking to see if they're actually the same thickness. I suspect that they are. They are, in fact. So that was on the two pillars. Put that one on there. See, now don't start mixing these screws up or I'll be unhappy. That's right. And the other washer went in the other position here. And that one, of course, had the countersunk head screw. And I might put this in the case because the whole thing's flopping around a bit. That's a bit better. Tighten those two screws up. And since someone had been very generous tightening them up beforehand, I'll make sure they're good and tight now too. But I'm not going to lock them in place with lacquer. I think that's overkill. I'll look at my surfaces to see how many finger marks I put on there in the process. There's only one surface there I don't much like the look of. And the rangefinder can only be adjusted when you can see through it, and you can only see through it when you've got a viewfinder eyepiece in place pretty much. But as always there are cheats, and I've got a partial top cover of a Vitessa sitting somewhere, which I'll put on here, but first I just want to see how that looks. And if I swing that lever across inside the camera, I'm just looking to see what the alignment of the images is like. Look, that looks credible. The vertical alignment looks pretty good, and the vertical alignment is the difficult one to get right, so I think that's going to go smoothly. So the body is pretty much dealt to, really. Oh, I forgot to put that mask back on the rangefinder, I better do that. So fitting the shutter. Yes, I suppose that could be done next. Which means I've got to put that shroud in there. I'll get that and we'll glue it in place. Right, put some glue on here, I suppose. Now that's only a thin edge, so I'm going to transfer the glue onto that edge with a toothpick here from the... That's probably the easiest way to deal with this. This is a metal piece. So it shouldn't be overly absorbent of adhesive. So it should be fine to put it on one surface and then press it into place. It should stay where it's put. That locates pretty firmly in position. There's not much wiggle room there, so that's good. That should be fine. I'll leave that to cure for 5 minutes. And mask for the top of the rangefinder. Now these are always fun to get on. It's held in position by a little spring-loaded washer here. And that spring-loaded washer is hard to lift up and get to play the game. Very thin, it's hard to get anything under it. That's under it. Right. See if I can lift that with the tip of a scalpel blade. Oh, that's that. Oh, I'm half there. Now I can get it halfway on, I can't get that washer to behave. I suspect I can only lift that on there easily when I've got the rangefinder off the body. Well, if that's the case, that's what I'll do. Oh yeah, the tail end of that spring catches underneath it. Right, that's it. That's how it should be. Back where we were. And my washer's still in place. One is. Where's the other one? Well, there's the other one. Let's get this screw in here to hold the first washer in place. Let's put the second washer in place. Why is something not sitting flat? Something is not correct. Let's run that screw in there. What's wrong with this rangefinder? That's it. What was all that about? Back where we were. That's good. And that's the parallax correction mask there. Okay, so far so good. That shutter release button is pretty dirty looking. I might take that off and I'm going to try and clean that in place, because if I take it off I'll disturb the alignment of things. I'll see if it'll clean. The rest of the top cover's cleaned up remarkably well. Oh, that's improved, and it's probably as improved as it would ever be. I doubt I'm going to get it any better than that. Right, the rangefinder looks good. I'm going to put the top cover on now. Got to get this shutter release, has got to be pointing in the right direction. It's got a flat on it here. which has to line up with the flat of the exposure meter body there, otherwise things don't move well, like that. So that top cover's on, and that of course is held in with 2 screws from below. Short chrome screw or nickel plated screw at this end, I think, and the long black screw at this end. I won't tighten them right up at this point. There's no point in doing that. Right, I think the shutter can go on next. I can find out what I've done with it. Here we have it. Had it carefully sitting wrapped up so that it didn't get any dust or dirt or problems. I'm convinced. Right, some screws from the back. There are 4 screws. One of them is smaller than the others and smaller diameter. Of course, I've forgotten which one went where. I think the small diameter one goes here actually. And the other 3 go here. About to find out. That's definitely correct. That's definitely correct. That's definitely correct. And so is that. I'll tighten these 4 screws up. Sometimes that shutter's not firing. Why? Put that plunger on the top. I think I've still got that gear 1 tooth out from where it needs to be. If I press this right down as far as it will go, the shutter fires every time. If I press it down as far as I need to for the film advance to release, the shutter doesn't go. So that's definitely the case. I'm going to take that off and deal with that. At least I know what I'm dealing with there. It's not a terrible problem. Basically it needs to be set so that the shutter itself cocks before the film advance has reached the end of its cocking stroke. Otherwise, if you're in a hurry and you're not pressing all the way down, you'd be cocking the film advance mechanism, but not the shutter. Right, well, I've been in here before. I might bore you with this. I'll just lift this off. 4 screws, lift that off, move that gear 1 tooth, put it back, job done. You'll see it in about 5 seconds time. It'll take me about 5 minutes. As I expected, I'd got that gearing 1 tooth out, and now I've got it absolutely perfect. So that part of the job is done. I'm almost in the tidying up stage now. Various tasks I still need to achieve. One, of course, is to focus the lens, make sure that the lens is correctly focused. So we can fit the lens to the camera, I suppose. Red dot to red dot. That latches into position, and I will set the shutter speed to B. The aperture I will set to fully open, 2.8 in this case, and I will check the focus at the film plane. Well, with the lens correctly focused at an infinity target, my focus scale ring is somewhat round from the infinity position. In this position here, it's focused on an infinity target correctly. So I'm loosening my clamp screws, and I should be able to move my focus scale ring around to the infinity position and do my screws back up again. I'm watching carefully to make sure the lens itself doesn't move. It didn't. And I'll check my result. Still got that disturbing rear lens group problem, but that's not going to go away. It's disturbing to look at. I don't think it's disturbing to look through. That's all appears to be good. Right, with that part done, you can screw this onto the front of the lens. This is our name ring and filter mount, if you like. One last clean of the lens at the front. That glass is much better than it was to start off with. I've still got no idea what that contaminant was that was on that lens. That was just weird. And my UV filter. I'll clean the outside surface. I think this filter maybe had it. Let's clean the inside surface and see how it looks. Some older filters were a sandwich. They were a glass with a gelatin filter layer between, and they suffer from separation as the gelatin layer decays over time. Oh, there's certainly a lot of marks on this glass. It's going to need another go. I presume it's the same filth that was on the lens. I suppose that makes sense. But what that was, I've got no idea. That's the outside surface. Let's check this inside surface again. Well, the outside surface I can see is somewhat less than pristine. It's probably been cleaned on any handy tail of t-shirt or anything. Yeah, look, there's something on that glass that just feels nasty when I run that cotton bud over that. Let's try a little bit of acetone on that and see how we get on. Yeah, there's certainly some deposit on there. Well, I did say that the top of the camera, that the filth on it might have been nicotine, might have been tar from cigarettes. I wonder whether that's the case, or if it's not that, whether it's something of a similar nature, and that it also got on the lens. Oh, that lens is, that UV filter is quite marked. It would be no great thing optically. The only thing you could say in its favour is it would keep fingers off the lens. It's certainly not a UV filter that would be a useful thing to have on there in terms of taking photos. And I've got the lens cap for this, but you can see it's somewhat yellow and dirty looking. I'm just going to go and wash that, see if I can get it clean. Well, it'd be nice to say that lens cap looked like $1 million now, but it doesn't. It looks more like $10.50. But it's considerably cleaner than it once was. And what have I got left? I've got to clean out any remaining dust, finger marks and grease from the back of the camera. But overall, the main thing I've got to achieve is to get that rangefinder correctly adjusted, and our light trap, which goes down in the edge of the body all the way around the back of the camera from one side of the front to the other. And that's just a piece of black yarn. There's nothing particularly wrong with the piece that's there. I'll probably glue that back in place. I've got to investigate this rangefinder first. The rangefinder did need adjusting. It wasn't a great deal of adjustment needed. It was slightly out in the vertical alignment. Vertical alignment was changed here. There's a little toothed wheel inside this hole, which turning one way or the other will change your vertical alignment. The horizontal alignment was moved here. There's a lock screw here, squared off lock screw. You just slightly loosen that and then you can twist the gap here left or right, which shifts the horizontal alignment, and then lock it again afterwards. That was locked with a touch of lacquer previously and I've locked it here again. The top cover, this little cover plate which covers those, fits on there. It's got a little locking tab under there and basically it bayonets on and then drops into place, and at this end it's held firmly down by the accessory shoe. The accessory shoe is just sitting on, has its two springs which you have to get up through the, let's pull that foot out so this camera sits level. Which way does it go? That way. That's better. Getting these two tension springs underneath the shoe is possibly the hardest part of this job. It's just getting those things sitting in their slot without falling over. Is always a bit of a bugger. Just checking that they are correctly positioned. They look okay to me. A screwdriver of appropriate size, there we go. Get one screw in, the other screw in. All these screws were chrome plated. They were not in particularly stunning condition and they still aren't. These two cleaned up reasonably well. The one at the front was just rusty. That was just ugly with rust, and so I've had to clean that, polish off all the rust, and I've just nickel plated that lightly to give it some degree of protection. It's not the same as chrome, but it doesn't look out of place, and it looks considerably better than a rusty one. So our screw can go back on the top of the plunger, and that only leaves me with getting that yarn back in place. And that is not a very exciting job at all. Where's my yarn? There it is. Basically it just lays in that groove around the back of the body. You can even see the shape of it here, where it's shaped to go around that loop of the finder. And it's been put in with a couple of touches of lacquer to keep it in position. And basically that's all I'm going to do again. There's no reason to believe that will have shrunk, and it's at least as good as me replacing it with a new piece of yarn, since there's nothing wrong with this one. Right. That's what I've got to achieve, is just get that tucked into the body. All the way around there and stuck in place with a little touch of lacquer. Wish me luck. What I find helpful when trying to install this yarn is to have a dry run. Basically install the yarn with no adhesive at all, to ensure that you've got the right length and that you can get it sitting correctly to your satisfaction. And once that's done, it's a fairly simple matter to just pull the yarn out at one end, back halfway, put your lacquer on it as you go, press it back into position, then go back to the first end, lift that out, put your lacquer in place and push the yarn in position. Now I can see here I'm not going round as far as I want to go, so I know my yarn's slightly too short there, or I've started too far back at the other end. And there won't be much in it. We'll start there. If I was starting with a new piece of yarn, it wouldn't be so much of a problem. I would just start at the beginning, keep feeding it until I got the end, and then cut the thing off. This is looking more like it. Right, that'll do. Okay, well I'll get my adhesive and put that in place. So I'm just going to use some lacquer for that. Nail varnish, clear nail varnish. I'll put a spot of that in a couple of places. That'll hold it. Well, there we have it. This is our Vitessa T, ready to go home now. It's as good as I'm going to be able to get it anyway. It's just one of those things really. The major shortcoming this particular camera has was just the condition of that rear lens group and that little bit of separation that's in there. But I do believe that that will have probably no or very little effect on image quality, and so I don't think that the owner will have any cause to be overly concerned about that. I've got to put a daub of red paint on that screw at the top there so that it acts as a helpful guide to tell you where you're to position your lens. I'll do that and then I'll pack this and send it home. So thanks for watching.